Well, good afternoon, everyone. Is there any Foxtel subscribers in the room today? Yes. Anyone watching the new series on Tuesday nights? Thank you very much. I had the privilege of travelling around the country and seeing all states and territories with the exception of Northern Territory this season. So I'd love for someone to put their hand up and say they'd love for us to buy them a house in the Northern Territory, because that'd be a lot of fun. But I get the privilege of, travelling around the country and seeing different property markets. But today I'm actually going to talk to you about a topic that I'm very passionate about, and that's how to build a property investment strategy for life with a passive income. That's not clicking forward. So there we go. So I bought my first investment property in 1999 in my hometown of Perth, and I made all the mistakes under the sun. It was in a block of over 100 apartments. It was 3 towers. The centre tower had a lift, had a pool, a caretaker, and I was in one of the side towers where I wasn't even able to take advantage of the lift. So I had to pay for the lift in my body corporates, but I didn't get to use it. So the good thing about that is, whilst I made all these mistakes on my first investment property, property is a very forgiving asset class, and it's done very well over the journey. But one of the things when I first got involved in property investment, I got caught up in the mantra of just buying more and more properties. So, I had to buy one. When I've got more equity, I'll buy another one. When I've got more equity, I've got to buy another one. And there's just this infinite end goal of just continuing to buy. But having been a property investment advisor now for the last 16 years, we've got a little bit, smarter about the way that we structure the portfolios. And I've got some stats to show you today, which I think you might find, are you doing it or me? Yeah, you're doing it. Which I think you might find really interesting. So if we, just by a quick query, who's actually investing in property now? Yep. Who's got multiple properties out of those one? Okay, brilliant. Across different states? Okay, excellent. Who isn't yet investing but wants to? Yep. And there's a few of you who won't answer any questions I asked today. Good. We've broken the ice, which is good. So we're going to talk about some stats. I think I did this yesterday. I had a good chat with some people afterwards, and they were really surprised by these numbers. So you might be surprised by them also. The next one is the property investment formula. Now, I've got a bit of a confession to make. I don't know if there's anyone else in the audience like me, but I like things in their place, and a place for everything. I like order, I like detail. When I was a kid at primary school, when you pull your drawer out from underneath the desk and the teacher would do a spot check, I could just pull it out and it was in order. And it drives my wife absolutely crazy. So is anyone a bit like me that just likes things orderly and neat? Yep. And so I guess when you have residential real estate, that's a problem for my personality type, because property is a bit like a fingerprint where no two are the same. Whereas if you're into shares, anyone like shares? Yep. There's no shares versus property chat here. I think there's a place for both. The only independent thing I think is going for property over shares is leverage, but otherwise I think there's a place for both. So I guess for me, understanding my personality type, therefore, if I buy a BHP share number 172 or I buy BHP share number 1172, they're the same. They're very, very similar. Whereas property, even in the same development, they're very, very different. So the way that I've had to deal with my personality type is to try and bring some synthesis or some formula into what it is to build a property portfolio. So I'm going to run through what that formula looks like. I'm also going to run through the 5 essential steps, whether you're a first-time investor or whether it's someone who's a seasoned portfolio builder. These essential steps will work for you. And of course, I'm going to run through a case study on how this actually works. I know Effie Zahos, who's the editor of the Money magazine, she came to us with a challenge on how we'd build a portfolio so someone could get a $2,500 per week passive income, debt-free in retirement through residential real estate. And I can assure you that the scenarios, we built 3 case studies, and all 3 of them had less than 10 properties. In fact, all 3 of them had 5 or less investment properties. So hopefully that's encouraging to you, because I guess for me, being in the property investment industry, it's easy to think that everyone actually invests in property. But if you have a look at this stats here, you'll see that 73% of the population actually stop at one investment property. So when you read the magazines where there's 10 properties in 10 months or 22 properties in 3 years, it kind of gives you this belief that everyone just has heaps and heaps of property. But I actually see, as part of my role as a property investment advisor, people come into the office and talk to us about what they've got. So I actually see the portfolio and I see what people are achieving. And a couple of things are really interesting. These stats are actually true, that not everyone does have investment properties. And the other thing I've noticed is that if you open any textbook, they'll say 10% capital growth each and every year as a minimum. But in my experience, what I'm finding is that just from the evidence that I see on the ground from real people, that the average return that people are getting is somewhere between 4 and 6% per annum. So those textbook returns aren't necessarily what they're getting. So what I find really interesting about these stats here is that 91%, or 9 out of every 10 property investors, so think about the population of Australia and then the very small percentage of the population who actually do invest in a property, a very large percentage of that small group stop at 2 or 1. Because it's 91% have 2 or less investment properties. So it's okay to say that you can make money from buying multiple properties. You can subdivide, you can flip, you can renovate. All those strategies work. I know lots of people who are doing them and lots of people who are doing them really well. But in my experience, they are the exception, not the rule, because most people aren't actually doing those strategies. So when we're building strategies, we've got to keep that in mind and remember that we need to be conservative on what we do and understand that the idea of suggesting someone buys 2 or even 3 or even 4 investment properties is really daunting for a lot of people. So we need to be very, very conscious of that. So those stats I gave you are the 2009 stats. I couldn't get the 11s or the 12s broken down to that much, but you can see that there's a rough correlation there in terms of how much people are buying. You can see there's a bit of growth, but there's still only 1.895 million people in the most recent stats that we could get from the Australian Taxation Office that register, whoever puts a taxation return in for this property. So before we go to the next one, who actually is investing in Victoria? Yep. So just so you know, we're actually filming this presentation. So if anyone wants a copy of it, you can give us your details at the end of the presentation. We'll email you a link of this presentation. So if you can write notes, take photos, it's no problem, but we'll give you a full link so that you can actually see the whole presentation again. So who's actually investing in Victoria? Yep, brilliant. Who's investing in New South Wales? Queensland? Other sides of the country? Okay, so the next slide's actually going to show us where most people actually invest. So 30% of all property investors buy in New South Wales. In fact, Victoria is 3rd behind Queensland as a place to invest. Now, I'm a Perth boy who married a Melbourne girl, which is why I live in Melbourne, but I have no bias whatsoever towards this state. I just think it's a really good state to hold real estate in because it's a large metropolis. We heard all the press recently about how good it is to live here. I think it's a very, very good state to own property in. So if you do own property in Victoria, that's wonderful. But there are some really good opportunities. Now, I often, the bottom 4, South Australia, Canberra or ACT, Tasmania and the Northern Territory. Can you make money in those cities? Yes, you can, but they've got the lowest population base and the stats would indicate that the least amount of popularity to invest in those states. Now, I do travel around and move into these states. I love going to Adelaide. It's a beautiful city. I love going home to Perth. I love going to Canberra and Tasmania. Tasmania is some of the best episodes we've ever made on the show. But as an investor, you're not there to get caught up in the emotion of it. You're there to stay statistically safe so that you can build the best amount of wealth that you can with your residential portfolio. So here's the formula. It's 4 parts. You actually have to master all 4 of these parts. In the Money magazine that you've got, as walking in today, it's at the back. I wrote an article on this topic here that includes these 4 parts of the formula. Again, if you don't have any pen to write your notes, get a copy of that. It's in the middle of the magazine. So the first one, asset selection. What I find is Because people live in a home, it's easy to think that you automatically qualify for mastery in this particular part of the formula. But what I would say to you is that at any point in time on the market right now, I believe that there's more properties that don't make for a good investment than properties that do make for a good sort of investment grade asset. So there is a science and there's a process which I'll show you shortly. The next part is borrowing power. Now, I think that anyone who's looking to build a portfolio of property that's got more than their principal place of residence and one investment property, if you've got a principal place of residence, one investment property, probably not as crucial, but as soon as you want to get onto the second property, it's critical that you understand this and master it so that you can realise it's more than just establishment costs and interest rates. There's so much more to it. It's about structure. It's about lending. We organise over about $100 to $110 million worth of lending within our mortgage broking division in our business, and most of the time it's all about structure, and most of the time for the principal place of residence we suggest that our clients should go interest only on their principal place of residence. How do you feel about that? Kind of goes against the grain, doesn't it? Interest only on your principal place of residence. Are you mad? But we structure it in such a way that we get the structure of the finance right so that the interest only component on the principal place of residence is married up with the clever use of an offset account. We put all of our surplus cash into that. We're actually doing the same as a principal and interest payment, probably plus more, increasing flexibility, freeing up cash flow so that you can invest in property and actually leverage yourself into a better position. I know that's a bit sort of out there, and if anyone wants to have a chat about that, more than happy to do that, but I can assure you that about 95% of our clients switch over to interest only for their principal place of residence, which I know blows every myth, every conversation you've had with your parents over the kitchen table. That's not what to do. But mark my words that the repayment or the elimination of your mortgage is still number one priority, should be everyone's priority, because there's no tax advantage from doing that. Third one I think is the hardest part to master, and that's the cash flow management, because you've got your budget here, which you do your budget at the beginning of the month and you go, righto, I should have $2,000 left, and then you get to the end of the month and you check your bank balance and you go, I don't quite have $2,000 left, so the money went somewhere. So you've got your budget over here, and then over here you've got your investment properties with the rates and the insurance and money in and money out from the rent, and then over in the middle here you've got your bucket lists, your short, medium and long-term parts of your bucket list, where you want to go to Europe on your 50th birthday, you want to put your kids through private school, you want to renovate the kitchen, you want to upgrade your car. So you've got these three components of your life really, and the hard part is actually bringing them all together, and so you've actually got a sophisticated way of keeping on top of that and managing it. So again, money management is a huge part of what we do. And the fourth one is defence. It used to be the ABC of property investments, now the D, and that's effectively setting it up so that no one can actually attack what you've got. So if we go through them in turn, the first one here, you've probably seen, just one more click, thank you. You've probably seen a variation of this before. I mentioned to you that most of the returns that I see, actual anecdotal evidence of people who give me portfolios that I see, somewhere between 4 and 6% is the growth that they've been getting compound since they bought. So if you see this at $500,000, track it over 20 years, at 5% you'd have 1.3 million. So your property would have grown in value, which is great. But if you had it just done marginally better than that and bought it at 7%, it'd be worth 1.9, and if you can really outperform the average at 12, it's 4.8. But really what I want to show is the difference between 5 and 10 is actually really quite significant. So asset selection is crucial. It's actually crucial to get it right. So if we have a look at the next one, there's a bit of a framework that you need to go through. So I often get asked the question, how's the market going, Bryce? And I say, so are you buying or are you selling? Are you investing? So what's the question? Because I don't think that it's easy to answer that question with generalisations. So what we really want to talk about is The Australian market is made up of sub-markets where the states don't move at the same rate together, and then within those states there's hundreds and hundreds of sub-markets that make up the market. So if you own a 2-bedroom apartment in Elwood, do you care what Melbourne's doing, or do you care what the market around Elwood is doing at 1 kilometre? Or if you own a property in Newport, do you care what Melbourne's doing, or do you care what's happening in Newport and Williamstown and Yarraville and the surrounding parts? So the market, you're not buying the market, you're actually buying a localised neighbourhood. So it's important you understand which state you want to be in first. Now, if you think about around the country right now, probably the Sunshine State is offering really good opportunity. Who knows? But they have been affordable, they've had some issues with perception based on floods, but they've now seemed to have all the ducks lining up to be quite good. So you consider Brisbane. I think there's still some good opportunities to buy in Melbourne, despite the fact it's had a really good run, but I don't think that there's, you can't just sort of go press hard 4 copies on just a property that you pick out. You need to have some science around that. Now in terms of suburb, there's only 21 investment grade suburbs in this city that we would consider. And so my question to you is, what is the most important thing that drives capital growth, or the property value and capital growth? What is the most important factor? Population. Population is important, but I think that there's something more, it's a derivative of population. Emotion of buyers, it's really important because we want people to be invested in it and have their heart in the, but I think there's something a bit more important than that. Supply and demand is important, but I think there's more. Jobless? Job rates. Part of that. It's actually income. Income is the most important thing. When you're determining a suburb, you need to understand the income. So here's the point. The median price in Melbourne is about $602,000, yeah? But if I go to Middle Park, if I go to South Yarra, if I go to Brighton, how much is the median price there? 7 figures plus, yeah? So does that mean because it's so far away from the median price of Melbourne, it won't continue to grow in value? Does anyone want to suggest that those suburbs won't continue to grow in value? In my view, they will, but the reason is because of income. Because who lives in Middle Park? Who lives in Albert Park? Who lives in South Yarra? The people who are likely to get a pay rise next year or get more income next year, so that when they go to buy the property that was 1.7 and it's now 1.85 next year, they can actually support the ability to buy it because of their income. So the flip side of that, if you think of just old supply and demand, think of a subdivision out in the far reaches of Melbourne, and there's 10,000 houses available and 12,000 people want to be there. Simple supply and demand would suggest that they should go up in value, but it's not quite the case, because really those people probably have a similar amount of income, similar amount of children, similar amount of credit card debt, similar amount of prospects of getting a pay rise next year. So let's say we buy something for $400,000 and we want it to be worth another 10% next year. It means that we have to go to the bank and demonstrate that we can borrow $440 when last year we could borrow $400. And if the bank says you don't earn enough income, they're not going to get you the loan. So then a glass ceiling will form. There'll be 2,000 people who didn't get a house who want to buy in there and pay more, but they don't have the ability to service the loan to borrow the money to buy the property. So income's critical. So that's one of the critical things that we look for when we're finding an investment grade suburb. Now the street, you know, in your suburb, there's good streets and bad streets, so you really want to look for those. The property, when it's an apartment, we only buy about 5% of the market. 95% of all apartments we ignore. So I like the 60s and 70s blocks, only sort of less than 21 in there, no pool, no caretaker, no lift, beautiful Edwardian this side of the street, beautiful Victorian that side of the street. I'm 3 blocks from the train. I can walk down to the cafe on a Saturday morning and fight my way through to get my bacon and eggs, because that's a good sign for a lifestyle driver. So these are the things that we look for, but never brand new. It's just my view, never brand new, because there's too many in the block and you're paying a premium to buy it to get those shiny taps, because they're often sold on depreciation. But I'm an accountant, I like depreciation as much as anyone, but I'd rather create depreciation by buying the 70s apartment, go and do a renovation, and then get the quantity surveyor to come through and give me some depreciation. So have a think about what sort of property. If it's a house, I like to get some period charm if we can afford it. I think the investment grade price is $350 to $850. Sometimes you go off that, but that's generally the sweet spot. Due diligence. I just bought a property in Sydney, in Mossman, for a client on the show. Now, she had a budget of 650. It went to auction at 650. It passed in at 625. We ended up buying it after some negotiation for 635. Now, it was a company title property. Does anyone had any experience with company title? Basically, it's not investing in real property. You're actually buying shares. So if you're buying apartment number 2 in a company title, generally you're buying share number 101 to 200 because the company owns the land, the company owns the building, then you're just buying some shares. Now the problem with that is it's not as popular. It was the precursor to the strata title system, and the banks don't generally like it. There's too many onerous house rules within the development, so it's not popular with banks, it's not popular with buyers. So under the due diligence process, we needed to understand that. Now she wanted to live in Mossman. If you know Sydney, Mossman's a beautiful suburb. If it was a strata title property, we probably would have paid $680. It was a company title, she was going to live in it, $635. But again, your due diligence needs to be really thorough. And then the last part is negotiation. Who negotiates all day, every day as part of their job? Real estate agents do. They negotiate all day, every day as part of their job. So you've got to be sharp and you've got to be on your toes and you've got to know exactly what you're doing on that. So borrowing power, if we click through 3 times, thank you. The players, lenders, brokers, I think the easiest way to master borrowing power is to get yourself an investment savvy mortgage broker on your team. Not a mortgage broker, an investment savvy mortgage broker, because they can get you the best deals from all the banks, plus they have the mindset of an investor. Because if someone's just doing a transaction, that's not enough. We need to think 2 or 3 loans in advance. Mortgage insurance. Anyone not like mortgage insurance? Yeah, my view is quite simple. Avoid it when you can, embrace it when you need to, but don't be shy of it. Understand it. You can write it off over 5 years as a tax deduction. If it means that you can get a slightly better property, the capital growth will exceed the amount of mortgage insurance that you pay. So avoid it when you can, embrace it when you need to, is my view on mortgage insurance. For borrowing capacity, the 3 C's, capacity, collateral and character. Capacity, do you have enough income? Have you been in your job long enough to suggest that the bank should give you the money? The collateral, do you have enough equity? Because they want to have a buffer in place. Character, do you pay your bills when they fall due so that they know that you're a good credit risk? When it comes to the products, know the difference between buying it for variable or getting a certain portion of it as fixed. You need to have a line of credit in place to help you with your stamp duty and your costs and even your deposits, so you don't have any cash outlay out of your pocket. And of course the offset account. We think money management is one of 4 things. The offset account is critical to that. Now in terms of loan structure, you want to have standalone loans, not have them cross-securitized. The bank wants to cross-securitize you, basically give you 1 loan, have 2 bits of security for it. You don't want that. You only ever want to give up 1 bit of security for each loan so that you are in control, otherwise you keep hitting these glass ceilings. And in terms of ownership name, whether or not you're going to buy it in your own name, whether it's going to be a self-managed super fund, whatever it is for you, if you buy it in your own name, this is how many options you have. When you buy it in your super fund, when you buy it in a trust, so you just got to be aware of that. Okay, so this is what cash flow management looks like. You've got your sources of income over here, and then the committed money in the middle. Now, no one actually overspends on the top 3. If you've got a Telstra bill for your mobile phone and it comes in at $80, do you ever give them $100, $20 tip? No one does. You pay $80. If they gave you a bill for $80.70, you would not pay them $81. You'd pay them $80.70. So you're never going to overspend on the top 3, but you are going to overspend on the bottom 2. Lattes, clothes, discretionary spending. So does anyone have a system so that they never overspend on their discretionary spending? No, we don't. We don't. But it's very, very simple. To manage your money in your house, you need 4 things. 1 debit card, 1 credit card, 1 offset account, or maybe multiple offset accounts, and your loans. That's it. So that if you set it up correctly, you will never, ever unconsciously overspend ever again. You'll consciously overspend, but you have to go online and do it, but you will never unconsciously overspend again. It's really simple, this stuff, but not a lot of people are doing it. And then, of course, if we can trap the surplus, we can then invest into our favourite investment class. Was that me or you? That was me. So these are the things. This is the reason why you have to manage it quite difficultly because there's so many variables that you need to consider. Now the last one is defence. Assets, obvious. Landlord protection insurance or building insurance to protect the assets. But what about your income? What if something happens to you and you can no longer earn your income anymore? The whole thing comes crashing down. You need to make sure you protect yourself from that. And what if, even worse, something happens that you're incapacitated and you can never earn an income again? So you need to protect yourself in those ways. Okay, the 5 essential steps as I do a quick time check here. When you go to the doctor, one of the things I hate about my industry is the one size fits all. So if you go to a doctor, sit down in their consultation room and you say nothing, and they just write you a script, hand you the script and ask you to leave, would you feel a bit ripped off? Of course you would, because they haven't listened to what's going on for you. They've given you a one-size-fits-all approach. But in my industry, that's what happens. You go up to somebody and say, what's the best property for me? And they go, this one. Well, how about asking you what your aversion to risk is? Do you like debt? How long until retirement? How much do you need? Do you have other commitments? There's a whole range of questions. So I think that this is a bit like going to a doctor, the same process for property investors. Step 1, go to the doctor, clarify. They say, what's wrong with you? So in a property investment advisor, you go, okay, what's your circumstances? What does it look like? Number 2, evaluate. The doctor would go, okay, based on what you've just told me, based on my training, my experience and my intuition, it's kind of what I think I'd do. Same with the property investment advisor. They've got to have some experience. They've got to be doing it themselves and also have some technical experience. The 3rd step is the doctor would go, right, you need to go and get some x-rays, you need to take the script, you need to drink less red wine, you need to walk the dog twice a week instead of once a week. Whatever it is, the property investment advisor would do the same. This is what I think you need to do. All things being equal, you'd chase growth before yield, but some people need to chase yield before growth. So there's no point saying I'm all about capital growth or I'm all about income, because people need different parts of that. And then you've got the last part there is, I think step 4 is the implement, where most people start, get online and do the doing rather than the first 3 steps, and then the manage. You've got to check it and see if it's on track, and if not, fine tune it. So investing in property is a process, not an event. So here's a case study. Mid-30s couple, 2 young kids. Their monthly after tax was $8,042. Bill payments including Foxtel. It's important to know. Foxtel at 2,156, lifestyle and discretionary 2,750, loan payments including the mortgage 2,712, total expenditure 7,618, $424 a month. Surplus, that's what we got to use to invest in property. Now, alone it's probably not enough, but if we restructure some of their finance, we can free up more cash flow so that we can actually use that extra cash flow to invest in property. Their goal is $2,500 passive per week. Now I'm about to show you the strategy that took us hours to build, probably about 7 hours. I'm going to flip it up on a screen. You can think it's really easy. We're just throwing some numbers up there. This is just to say it's a disclaimer that we haven't taken into account your circumstances. Okay, mid-30s couple. They had a principal place of residence. Their LVR was under 50%. Okay, first investment property this year, 500, 8% growth, 4% yield, LVR 73.7%. So again, no mortgage insurance. 4 years later, they needed to buy another investment property, $400,000 in today's dollars, but of course 4 years from now the equivalent will be more. So that's actually $503,000 roughly that they'll pay. Again, 4% yield. The LVR didn't touch 80, so there's no mortgage insurance here. 3rd one. Now this is where our strategy goes, because the first part we need the capital growth to build the wealth, but then the last part of the strategy is we need a cash cow, something that's got more yield than growth. Typical growth, because we're going to use that last one to smash down the debt, because we want to actually get this debt-free in retirement, so you've got this passive income. The good part about this is job done, game over. $130,000 in today's money, passive income, principal place of residence, 3 investment properties, 2 growth properties, 1 yield property, game over. End goal is known. Don't need to buy any more properties. So I think that's really encouraging, because in an environment where it's about buying 10 properties and 20 properties and as many as you possibly can and getting to a big debt cycle and having a big cash flow burden and using the equity in your property to service the debt on the other properties and hope that they continue to grow in value and hopefully you've got enough equity, that actually does work. but it's not for everyone, because it's a really, if you look at the stats at the beginning, 73% of the population stop at one investment property. Now I'll talk to you about getting access to this presentation. We are filming it. We're going to put it up on the net so you can get a copy. So if you got your brochures there's a yellow form. If you want to get a copy of the article that we wrote, which was the cover story for the Money magazine, there was 3 case studies. Late 20s single female, that mid-30s couple with 2 younger children, the mid-40s couple with 2 older children, what we had to actually do from their circumstances to get them that passive income. If you want a copy of that, we'll make it freely available to you. Just give the forms to our team at the back of the room, and as a result we'll send you out a copy of this presentation so you've got it as well. So how did I go for time, Sarah? My timer just went off. So is there any quick questions that anyone might have?